Welcome to the deep dive. Today we're really cutting through the noise, trying to get to the core of some, well, pretty surprising information.
That's right.
Our deep dive is all about a company called New Capital Link, specifically what they're saying publicly about their projects, about people like Billy Jackson.
And crucially, what our sources suggest they might be, let's say, conveniently leaving out.
Exactly. The goal here is to help you, our listener, get a really well-informed understanding. Looking at the underlying facts, the potential red flags, it's all in the material we've examined.
And we're going to guide you through it. We'll be scrutinizing, specific blog posts from New Capital Link.
Okay.
Uncovering what seems like some significant omissions, and then looking into the backgrounds of some of the key figures involved here.
So it's not just facts, is it?
No, not just a list of facts. It's about understanding the implications, the real-world consequences for anyone thinking about getting involved or maybe already involved in ventures like these.
Okay, right. Let's unpack this then. The material we've looked at suggests New Capital Link is, well, essentially operating like Billy Jackson's personal PR team.
Like a PR arm, yeah.
Their blogs seem full of praise for his projects, but what exactly are they leaving out? What's missing from this public story?
Well, what's really fascinating and frankly quite stark is the contrast. The investigations we reviewed, they point to a history, missed payments, failed schemes,
right,
and a growing number of, well, unhappy investors. It looks like a classic case of selective disclosure.
Selective disclosure, only showing the good bits.
Precisely. Only presenting the most flattering side of the story. And the deeper insight there, maybe, is when a company focuses so much on just managing its image rather than tackling the actual, concrete financial issues.
It often signals something else is going on.
It often signals significant underlying problems, yeah.
We looked closely at one article from their site. It was titled, Northumberland Living Developments, The Truth About West Chevington Farm.
Right, I remember that one.
It promised to explain, and I'm quoting here, the role of Castle Trust in the Northumberland Living setup, and the connection between Northumberland Living, WH 2022 Limited, and Alnwick Limited. So, okay, big promises. What did the sources actually find?
Instead of the promised clarity, what actually emerged was confusion.
Yeah.
And, to be honest, inaccuracies.
Inaccuracies? Like what?
For example, there was a link in the article. It was supposed to explain Alnwick Limited.
Okay.
But it actually linked to a completely different company altogether.
Oh. So that raises a question, doesn't it?
It does. Is this just, carelessness, simple mistake, or is it more like a hope that maybe nobody would check too closely? It suggests at least a certain disregard for factual accuracy in what really should be critical information for investors.
And in that very same article, Billy Jackson himself is quoted. He says, transparency with our loan note holders remains our top priority. We are experienced and committed. We communicate clearly and protect investor interests.
That's a very bold statement.
It is.
But the information we've gathered, it suggests that claim doesn't really align with the facts on the ground.
How so?
Well, we found accounts from investors, people involved in Platinum Energy Solutions or Platinum Assets and Development.
But earlier ventures.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And they allegedly received no updates, no payments, absolutely no information about where their money went.
Wow.
Some of them now express, deep regret about investing at all. And what's striking is that others who followed Jackson into newer ventures, like this Northumberland Living, they seem to be experiencing the exact same thing. Significant delays, misredemptions, and just silence.
Persistent silence. Okay, now this next detail, this is about Castle Trust. And it seems to really shift the perspective on those blog claims.
Yes, this is crucial.
New Capital Link's blog states, and we should quote it exactly as written, errors and all, says, Castle Trust, the role and responsibility of security trustee is to provide crucial legal protection for investors in fundraising transactions. Unfortunately, Castle Trust had unforeseen issues and was unable to continue to act as our trustee on this project. As a result, we have had to ensure our loan note holders have peace of mind with regular updates.
Right. Unforeseen issues. But the crucial part is what they don't say.
Which is?
The investigations we looked at reveal the Castle Trust in Management Services.
Yeah.
It was actually wound up by the courts in Gibraltar back in 2023.
Wound up, so liquidated.
Yeah.
Ceased to exist.
Exactly. Formally liquidated. And critically, that means it lost its ability to act as that legal protector for investor funds.
So that's not just an unforeseen issue. That's fundamental.
It's absolutely fundamental. It directly impacts the security, the legal protection of the investor's money. It really makes you wonder, doesn't it? If that core legal safety net is gone, what are investors actually relying on?
Good question. And the blog just wraps up with this sort of vague promise, regular updates. So what does that mean then, given Castle Trust was actually wound up?
Well, updates, as the analysis points out quite sharply, they are absolutely no substitute for proper legal protection.
Right.
Or for real asset transparency or, actual access to your funds.
Seems obvious when you put it like that.
It does. And it highlights what seems to be a familiar pattern here. When things start to go wrong, the goal appears to be managing perception, controlling the story.
Rather than offering clear explanations or solutions.
Precisely. And the material we reviewed poses a really pointed question for you, the listener, to consider. If investors from earlier schemes still haven't been paid, why should new investors expect a different outcome this time?
That's a tough question. And as we keep pulling on these threads, it looks like some patterns and maybe some familiar faces are reappearing.
Yes, that's right.
A name pops up, Tony Hughes.
Yes, Tony Hughes.
The very same Tony Hughes who led the High Street Group, who helped launch those platinum-branded loan notes.
That's the one. And it seems, based on our sources, he's now collaborating with Billy Jackson again.
Really? I think most people assume that partnership ended after Platinum collapsed.
That was the assumption. But the information we've seen is quite clear. It's back on. And frankly, that should raise some serious concerns for anyone watching the space.
Why specifically? What's the background there?
Well, Hughes was involved with High Street Commercial Services and also a company called AWM Financial Services.
AWM Financial Services.
Yes, and that firm was shut down by the Financial Services Compensation Scheme, the FSCS, back in 2017.
Okay, and what was AWM known for? Why were they shut down?
The sources state that AWM was encouraging people, advising them, to withdraw their pensions.
Oh, dear.
And then invest that pension money into high-risk schemes, including, notably, Castle Trust itself.
The same Castle Trust we were just talking about.
The very same. And the result for many people, lost pensions, empty savings accounts, devastating consequences.
So the insight here is?
The insight is that this history, this involvement in failed ventures, this specific connection to pension losses, it means the return of Tony Hughes to this kind of operation warrants significant scrutiny. It feels like a recurring pattern you really need to be aware of.
It's not just the blog content, then, or these past connections that raise questions, according to the sources.
No, it's also the team, the people actually behind New Capital Link.
Right. Who is running the show?
The investigations really dig into who's leading this operation. They identify a James Baird as a convicted fraudster.
A convicted fraudster.
Yes. Then there's Rachel Buskell, listed as CEO, but who appears to have very little financial services experience on record.
Okay.
And Robert Findon, whose background seems to be primarily as a Conservative Party campaign manager.
So these are the people, the sources point out, promoting these high-risk, unregulated investment schemes to the public.
That's what the sources indicate. And the key insight maybe is how these, seemingly legitimate public-facing operations can sometimes mask a team whose combined background, lack of financial expertise, regulatory issues, even criminal records.
Should be a massive red flag.
Should be an immediate flashing red light, yes. It illustrates a tactic sometimes seen in these kinds of high-risk ventures.
Let's focus on Robert Findon for a second. The New Capital Link website lists him as an alternative investment introducer.
Right.
But his LinkedIn profile, according to the analysis we saw, tells a rather different story.
It does. It shows very deep political roots, not financial ones. He's worked as a campaign manager for the Conservative Party, parliamentary assistant, deputy campaign director for Kent Conservatives, and currently he's listed as campaign manager for Tunbridge Conservatives.
Okay, so alternative investment introducer implies he's bringing investors to, what, higher risk products?
Usually, yes. Alternative investments often means higher risk, but the crucial part is these are typically unregulated schemes.
Meaning they fall outside the normal safety nets.
Exactly. Outside the typical regulatory oversight that's designed to protect investors' money. Which raises another important question for you to think about. Why would someone with such a prominent political background get involved in promoting unregulated financial products?
Do the sources offer an answer?
They don't give an explicit answer, no. But the lack of sort of traditional financial experience in that specific role, it definitely raises concerns about ethics, maybe transparency, judgment, in this particular context.
So when you step back, look at the bigger picture painted by these investigations, what does it all really mean?
Well, the sources pose the question very directly to you, the listener. Would you genuinely trust your money with a team that's led by a convicted fraudster,
Right.
a politically connected marketer with no obvious financial track record,
Okay.
and CEO with apparently little relevant experience?
Because that's the team.
Because that, according to the material we've reviewed, is precisely who is running New Capital Link. And they are actively encouraging people to put their money into these high-risk, unregulated schemes.
Wow. Okay. So we've just done a pretty deep dive here into what our sources are revealing about New Capital Link.
Yeah.
About their blog content, the key players like Billy Jackson and Tony Hughes, and the team behind the whole operation.
It's definitely a stark reminder, isn't it, of how critical it is to look beyond just the surface-level information.
Absolutely. Don't just take the marketing at face value.
Exactly. And our sources for this, specifically the firm Insolvency Law, they state that they go deeper. They investigate the directors. They meticulously trace the company histories.
They look for the red flags.
They work hard to identify those red flags and maybe others miss or ignore. And they actually offer to help. If you're considering an investment and you really want to know who's truly behind it.
Or if you're already involved.
Or if you're already owed money, perhaps, and you're just getting silence, no response at all.
How can people reach them?
You can email them at investigations@insolvencyandlaw.co.uk, or you can call them on 020-7504-1300.
Okay, that's investigations@insolvencyandlaw.co.uk or 020-7504-1300, because you really do deserve clear answers, don't you? Not just spin.
Absolutely. Clear answers are essential.
So for our final provocative thought today, something for you to mull over. In this world where we're just flooded with information, how much do we actually know if we don't make the effort to look beyond the surface?
Especially when it comes to something as important as our financial future.
Exactly. And what responsibility do we each have, really, to seek out the full story, not just the easy version?
That's definitely something to think about.